What's good, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Stage. This week we have someone that's somewhat in the fighting game community that has been for a little bit. He was in his Twitter bio, I'm sorry, that was part of Panda Global, which is now sadly gone. We've already had someone that was part of Panda. If you guys haven't already seen Kid Liquid's episode, please check that out. But this week we have Josh, or Josh. I'm not sure how to pronounce your bio, Josh. But welcome. For those that don't know you, I definitely don't really know you. If you want to introduce yourself, that'd be amazing.
Sure. Yep. So my name is Josh Marcotte. The tag is Jaaahsh. I grew up in the south of Boston. So like it's sort of, if you can imagine Family Guy's accent kind of thing, it's Jaaahsh. Like that's sort of where it came from. That's what how my mother referred to me as a kid. And so I think that's where my tag comes from. I'm currently the North American talent strategist at Team Liquid, formerly talent manager and YouTube creative conceptor, all sorts of stuff at Panda before that chapter ended. And even before that, I ran Smash events around the country for many years, ever since 2015. So this is basically my 10th year now of event running or being somehow connected to Smash or fighting game events.
Amazing. Oh, wow. Okay, cool. So you definitely know the scene quite well. 10 years, been around, doing a lot of activations for different companies. Like I said, you're now currently at Team Liquid, which is an amazing, quite large esports organization. So, talent strategist. What's a talent strategist?
Yeah, of course. So I think in a traditional sort of esports sense, or in a traditional team structure, you have whatever athletes and content creators, they're all considered talent, and you usually have a talent manager or a couple talent managers that are responsible for the full roster. Team Liquid, of course, is enormous. There's about 150 athletes, content creators all across the world. And so there are a number of talent managers that deal with the talent day-to-day, and then the talent strategists are, in some form, sort of the managers of the talent manager.
Okay.
Is maybe the easiest way to explain it.
Yeah.
We're also responsible. There's three of us, one for North America, one for Europe, and one for Brazil. Our primary role is to make sure that the needs of the larger organization, of course, Team Liquid being a rather complex group, all the needs of the organization are met by the talent team, so that we always make sure we have a content creator at the ready to go for, say, Deadlock or TFT or whatever is sort of popping up and is sort of the big thing, while also still providing support to our partners, to our needs within the organization, and then just generally serving the goals of the organization.
Okay, cool. So in my mind, after finishing work quite recently today, I'm not left forever. I'm a 9 to 5, so in my mind, in a corporate official's the wrong word, a corporate business, the talent managers are managers, so technically middle managers, I guess, and someone like yourself, a talent strategist, managing the managers, would be a senior manager.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a fair way of putting it. I think obviously, as was always the case in esports and always the case in these sorts of groups, there's a lot of sort of shifting roles, shifting responsibilities. Yes. At Panda, for instance, talent manager there suggests all I was doing was talent managing, but the size of the business meant I was doing a billion other things.
Yeah.
I think Liquid is in a similar position where I'm certainly not only doing that in my day-to-day, but I think that's the easiest corollary for sure.
Okay, cool, good. I'm glad that sort of works, especially in my mind, because I'm still corporate filled, just because of my 9 to 5. But cool. So you've mentioned you're at Team Liquid at the moment. You've been around for at least 10 years within this space, within this sport, within the fighting game scene, with Smash as well. So how did you start? What happened from being in Smash 10 years ago to being a talent strategist?
Sure. So I was in Minnesota at the University of Minnesota 10 years ago, pursuing my PhD in history.
Okay.
I was in the graduate school program. I was super enthusiastic about going for my PhD. And then Smash for WiiU came out, and I said, okay, well, on the side, I used to be, interested in Brawl. Brawl came out when I was in college, and so I said, okay, I have a lot of experience working with events all throughout I'd gotten throughout my college experience. I'd done residential life for so long. I'd done events for different departments. And so I sort of threw my hat in the ring, and I said to the undergraduate group that ran the University of Minnesota Smash group, I said, hey, do you want some assistance in running events? And so I started out there, and very quickly at the beginning of Smash for WiiU's life, there weren't really a lot of tournament runners that were excited about the game. Melee was still very prominent, and I think a lot of the folks were really interested in running Melee events. They sort of expected Smash WiiU to die as Brawl had sort of died. And so I found myself in this space where I was very quickly getting bigger and bigger jobs. I worked the Big House 5 in 2015, which was the first time Smash for WiiU was there. And then very soon thereafter, I started working Genesis and Shine and all these sort of larger events that were happening around the country. There was a point where I was traveling once or twice a month, separate from my grad school life, to help run these events in these different spaces. And then I think through working so many events, you meet so many folks. Of course, you meet players, you meet managers, you meet all sorts of folks behind the scenes. And I had a conversation at some point with the CEO and the CFO of Panda, who happened to be at, I think it was a Big House or an event somewhere in the sort of the upper Midwest. And they asked what my experience was like and whatnot. And I sort of soft applied. I was originally given a role that was not directly related to talent management, but instead was more social media support. And then that role transitioned to one that was more full-time after I made the decision to leave my graduate school program. So
that was going to be my next question.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed the public-facing side of being a grad student. I loved teaching. I loved working. I worked with a high school program that taught kids basic research skills and this sort of thing. I really enjoyed that. I absolutely hated the dissertation and writing part, which is unfortunately an enormous piece of what it takes to finish a PhD. So I made the decision in 2016 to leave my PhD program and pursue esports full time. And I took on a job with Panda and did all sorts of stuff on my local scene. And really it was a fine, I wasn't taking a huge fiscal risk. I had a lot of safety nets. And of course I was a grad student, so I wasn't exactly rolling in the dough as it was. But I sort of left one life to start another. And I think it's a funny sort of bit that 10 years later, I'm still here, right? I'm still doing this sort of thing. So I worked for Panda really intensely over lockdown. So I moved to Detroit in 2020, just before lockdown started. Panda was based in Detroit. I lived there for a year, working with the team directly, and then worked remotely for a couple of years. And then the rupture happened. Panda was embroiled in all sorts of controversy relating to Nintendo, relating to our sort of the Smash community's reaction to news that broke or rumors that broke or statements that broke about my former boss's involvement in different things. So I was one of the first to leave as that sort of happened. I recognized that I wanted the Smash community to thrive more than anything. I really enjoyed calling the community home, and it didn't serve anyone for me to stay with Panda as all that was coming throughout. So I left, and then very luckily, Team Liquid was looking for someone in this position around the same time. So I applied in. All sorts of friends and colleagues and coworkers who either worked for Liquid in the past or currently are with Liquid put in a good word for me. And I mean, I also think my application stood up on its own, but I'm sure, all the vouchers didn't hurt. And I managed to land that position. And I've certainly learned a lot. It's a whole different world from managing a primarily Smash and FGC team.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So amazing that you've landed on your feet, for one. I think what Chris Kid Liquid said originally in his episode was Panda dissolving, regardless of the situation that happened, was actually a good thing for all scenes to thrive, because the team that he worked with and everyone that was around, like yourself included, whilst concentrated in one particular space, was great, but able to pollinate, I guess, is a is the right term here, to spread out and get everywhere else to thrive, also helps. And yeah, with you luckily landing on your feet and you being able to make your own choice in leaving Panda first before anything else happened probably helped. And yeah, I would also like to think that whenever people apply, vouchers help. It is definitely sometimes who you know, but if you don't have the experience to back it up, that vouch can sometimes mean nothing. So who you know, but also you've got the experience. So, and you're with Team Liquid. You've been here with Team Liquid for so many years. I can't really do maths right now, but long enough.
A year and 10 months.
A year and 10 months. Okay. Well, my time frame has completely gone out the window then, because I thought Panda was a while ago now.
December 2022 was when that all happened. So yeah, we're approaching the 2-year mark for that.
Okay.
I like Chris's framing of it. I think Chris's framing of it feels fair, that we all sort of landed and there was so much talent at Panda that ended up elsewhere. I think constantly of some of my former coworkers who have all forged their own paths and have either joined on to other organizations like myself or have found really fruitful freelance work. So while I wouldn't have wished it for us in 2022, certainly I'm happy. I think I agree with him that like it worked out well for many of us.
Good. I'm glad, because company dissolving is one thing. People landing on their feet is a completely different part of the world. And I only wish for the best for everyone that is always affected in these sort of things and redundancies and whatnot. So you joined, just focusing slightly on Panda. So you started at Panda, giving up I wouldn't say giving up your education, but changing paths and not pursue your further education in your PhD. So you started Panda being a social media content manager of some description?
Yeah. I mean, so again, we were at the time maybe 7 people in Panda total. So there wasn't really it's hard to even say anyone had a strict title. Most of what I did was focused in on how do we better utilize the content creators and the athletes that we had on roster. How do we better market with them? How do we help our partners understand their value? What are the ways we can contribute to them developing as content creators or athletes proper? And a lot of where my stuff ended up being in the content side, helping folks experiment, especially before lockdown, helping folks experiment with what kinds of things would work, helping us convince HyperX, who was one of our main partners, for instance, to try this experiment out to see if we put one of our players at a HyperX booth and it's beat this pro for a headset, how can we make that even better for them to really give them even better ROI or really better return on whatever metrics they need to hit. That was sort of where I had focused in, at least before lockdown.
Okay, cool. And then post lockdown, Panda dissolved, or during lockdown really Panda dissolved, and so you managed to land on your feet at Team Liquid in a similar position. You said like you didn't come straight into as a talent strategist, right?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, but so I think if you had asked me in 2023 at the very beginning of my time with Team Liquid, are the roles related? I would have told you absolutely not. That I felt like my initial role in Liquid was so much more oriented towards figuring out sort of strategy for the department I was a part of. So talent management is a department proper at Liquid, right? It's not just one person or 2 people that report to the CEO, as is the case in most other esports teams. It's a whole department with its own internal goals and whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think initially when I joined Liquid, I thought to myself, this feels totally different than what I did at Panda. But as I sort of got situated and as I sort of recognized, it's all very scaled up. And I'm not doing talent management proper. I'm not speaking individually with talent on the day-to-day like I used to at Panda. But the sort of core elements of the job, again, making sure that we take best advantage of the resources we have. We're setting our content creators and athletes up for success. These all things still apply, just maybe in a slightly different way between my job at Panda and my job at Team Liquid.
Sorry. You joined Team Liquid. When you first joined, you didn't think you were going to be, if you got asked a question, are the two roles related, we would have said not. And from your description, to me, it sounds like, a startup company, you wear many different hats. You do everything because that is what is, you want the company to survive and thrive. And Team Liquid being a little bit more, not well known, but more established, I guess.
And structured. I think structured is structured. That was the culture shock for me. Okay. Was Panda was not unstructured, but certainly did not have the structure that Team Liquid does.
Yeah. So Team Liquid being more structured, already acting like a well set up business. I wouldn't say Panda wasn't well set up. I don't know that completely. But yeah, Team Liquid being more structured, being more acting like a grown up, because when startups happen, everyone's throwing money everywhere. Everyone's just trying to do the cool thing and be great. Panda obviously was doing that. Like I loved Panda when I saw what they did. And Team Liquid, having established quite some time now, with so many different esports teams. I mean, you're in Valorant at the moment. You're in Dota, because TI is about to kick off. We're in groups at the moment. League, TFT, so many different esports currently happening. Smash even, Team Liquid Leffen as well. Leffen is still part of Team Liquid, right?
No, that's TSM.
My bad. Sorry, I'll scratch that out.
It's Hungrybox.
Hungrybox. That's I have thoughts about Hungrybox, but that's my personal views. It seems like he's a great player. From the few conversations I've had with him, seems great. I have issues with him throwing chairs around on stage. That's me.
Sure. So the chairs also have issues with him throwing chairs around.
I'm sure. So with all of that, what would you say you are most... Sorry. So this question will seem a bit weird because this podcast being about people behind the stage, behind events, they may not have known what you have done, but what are you most proud of activating or presenting even?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair question. I think it's a fun one too, because it's when you're in talent management, you typically don't think of individual things as successes, right? Your whole MO is just to make sure that everyone has what they need, everyone is doing well, and sort of success is sort of a non-failure state, right? Like everyone is operating, everyone's good. Even when there's conflicts, there's conflict resolution. But I do think there are a couple moments throughout maybe my personal history that feel like highlights. I think one of the big ones is just we at Panda, towards the end of lockdown when there were no events, we had really hit our groove with regard to helping our content creators thrive on YouTube. Yeah. We had developed this really lovely, not only crossover channels that did Smash content with all of our creators, did fighting game content with our different creators. Each of the sort of talent channels that had signed onto our sort of management, this is Mars, Jay Wong, Punk, these channels were all doing so well. And there was definitely a point where I felt like you sort of get satisfaction from all sides. The players themselves are thrilled because their channels are thriving. They're getting more recognition as content creators and as minds. The company is stoked, of course, because this opens up new opportunities for activating with sponsors, but also opens new revenue streams with advertising in general. And then also there's like this personal level of satisfaction of feeling like you've kind of cracked the code a little bit. Like you can I sat in plenty of meetings with Coney, a former coworker of mine who, I mean, is now killing it on YouTube and on Twitch alike. We would have so many fruitful meetings where it would be like, what is the thing we can do right now that will be entertaining, be engaging, scratch these itches that YouTube has? And we were just knocking out of the park week after week. And that felt like a huge success. Like I said, just because it was satisfying to everyone who was involved. And there was a lot of joy being created from the fans as well as from the content creators and the editors and all that. There was just a lot of positivity. So I always think about that one as like maybe early 2021, mid 2021, we're all still at home. We're all still sort of figuring out what the future looks like. Yeah. But we're churning out YouTube content that is incredibly digestible and incredibly well received. And I still have one of the copies of the YouTube plaques from the Panda Smash channel.
Amazing.
I still have it and look at it every once in a while as sort of like I helped. I didn't do this myself, of course. This was not my hands, but I helped.
It's a team process. Like
fully.
Some of that, I want to believe a lot of channels, whilst there is definitely a face, there's definitely a team of people helping you create and get those subscribers in. I'm not even going to say like and subscribe this episode. I've come to the conclusion I do this because I want to shine more light on everyone behind the stage. I'm not here to to get clout and be a big YouTube persona. I think I'm past that personally. It's definitely not for me. I like to be behind the camera. I'm a photographer, so behind the camera is where I live. Being in front of the camera like this is definitely a weird feeling. Not a fan, but I do it because I get to talk to people like yourself, Josh. People I wouldn't really normally talk to, and find out what you do and how you do things and where you came from. Because the community at large, esports in general, there's so many people doing so much to make things happen. So yeah, okay, I'll switch the question around slightly. What was your favorite event you worked on whilst you were doing everything?
So I think the easiest answer for me here is it was an event called Riptide 2021. I had been part of a series of Smash tournaments that were held at water parks, at indoor water parks in Wisconsin called Smash and Splash. I had done 3 of those in the late 2010s. And there were some issues with how the event runners ran the thing. The sort of central event organizers didn't support the people actually on the ground running the tournament especially well. And so many of us broke off in 2018 or 2019. Now I'm getting the one getting timelines messed up. But we broke off in either 2018 or 2019 and sort of said we're not running another one of these events here. And so then a different indoor water park by the same company hit us up, and they were in Ohio, and they said, would you be interested in running an event for us? And so those of us who broke away from the first one, from Smash and Splash, started planning for what was going to be a 2020 tournament called Riptide.
Yeah.
It obviously didn't occur. It was going to be in early September. I think it was pretty clear in July or June that it wasn't going to happen, so we postponed. And then in early 2021, as vaccines started rolling out and as events started to pop up, we had a very, very sober conversation saying, hey, do we run this in September? What kinds of guidelines would we have to put forth? And we announced with health guidelines, we announced with mandatory masks, we announced with mandatory vaccinations. And the excitement the community felt for that event was so clear. It capped immediately. We released registration and it capped within 15 minutes. We talked to the venue, got the venue expanded once, raised the cap again. It capped within a half hour again. We talked to the venue a third time and said, what other spaces do you have? They found other spaces for us, and we expanded the cap again, all keeping in mind that we wanted to make sure we had obviously a certain number of people per square footage, because we were still worried about COVID and didn't want to have more than one person per X square feet, and made sure we could still have relative social distancing. And so we had raised the cap twice, and all 3 times that we opened registration, it capped immediately. The wait list for the event was huge, and it happened in early September in 2021. And it was probably the most nerve-wracking tournament I'd ever run, just because it was new feeling. It was certainly a whole new, like a brand new world. It felt like I'd run plenty of events. I'd been responsible for plenty of huge brackets, but there was something very different about being the first one back after a pause that we had all experienced. But the weekend went so well, and I think it was just like, there have been so many events since then and so many success stories since then, but it was just about being the first back to try and set the tone of what events could look like now that we'd had this last year and a half. That it was so satisfying to be a part of. I really enjoyed it, and it felt really at home to me. It felt like the community was coming back. Everyone was really excited about it. I was part of Riptide again the following year, and then I think for that, when Panda dissolved, I took a step back from event running. So at very least, I hold this Riptide 2021 as sort of one of the crown jewels of my event running resume.
Cool. That's amazing, because whilst we record this, the weekend literally just gone. Riptide has just finished up, I believe. So it's good to know that the event you helped create is still going strong even now, even after you've stepped back from running events.
you spoke a little while ago about the tenacity and the value of folks behind the camera or behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I think many folks in the Smash community and in the FGC are very aware of the importance of the TOs that run the events.
Yeah.
I think equally as important, and sometimes they go as celebrated. I think about maybe Jabali, for instance, for CEO, who is incredibly well celebrated, Rick for Combo Breaker, and Evo, who is well celebrated. The EOs oftentimes get under celebrated or don't get as recognized. And then also general event support teams, folks who run, volunteers or whatever. Riptide, I think, demonstrated the importance of celebrating those folks, because we all put in so much work for that first weekend, and it was so scary, and there was so much preparation and hundreds of hours of making sure every detail was correct.
Yeah.
And I think it resulted in exactly the atmosphere we wanted, which was, if you went and you wanted to have an old-time Smash experience, you totally could. If you were still apprehensive and wanted to stay pretty far from other people but still wanted the tournament experience, you could go, and it was relatively safe. And everyone got to experience what they wanted out of it.
Yeah.
That's all you can ask for.
Yeah.
And that was all thanks to those folks behind the desk, right, or behind the stage or whatever, who don't get the celebration that players or whatever do.
Yeah, anyone that's sitting, audience, spectators, players, people that aren't working and are attending the event, they always get celebrated, right? So guys like yourself and the whole team, obviously, you guys definitely need an applause, and sometimes, sadly, are not mentioned in times because people are caught up in the moment. Not because people just ignore you, but yeah, they're just caught up in the moment. So yeah, event organizers, so many of you guys just do so much work. And like I said, so many hundreds, probably millions of hours going through so much documentation, legalese, the whole works, especially as the first event coming out of a lockdown pandemic of COVID, with your square footage, your airflow numbers. Like you can say you don't know right now, but do you remember how big your Riptide was, like in terms of attendance?
It's a good quote, because we emphasized it so intensely during that registration period. I used to know the square footage. I used to know the number of people, because I used to remember the ratio so clearly. Can I summon that from memory right now? I want to say we had about 20,000 square feet, which maybe a little more, which is a huge amount of space.
Yeah.
And I think we capped it at 2,500 people. I remember it was roughly 10 square feet per person.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I feel so embarrassed if this number's around. But that's more or less, that's like, in terms of magnitude, that's sort of what we're looking at, is about 2,500 people, about 20,000, maybe it was 30,000 square feet, whatever the case may be.
The 2,500 roughly, that's still amazing, especially, just coming out of a lockdown, people getting vaccinated, wearing masks, coming out to a offline event, which we didn't have for a year and a half. People were definitely starved for that sort of environment, socially at least. So yeah, congratulations to you guys. Obviously, honestly, it's an amazing feat to have that created. And shout outs to everyone else that's working Riptide. Yeah, honestly, mind blown, crazy. It's epic. So yeah, that's definitely, you're probably the crown jewel in the events you've created. Not going to ask you for specific details, but is there one event that you wish you could have done better at?
It's an odd dance, because I think, having done dozens of events, I think over the last 10 years or so, you do get into this groove of recognizing that as long as baseline work is done, every event is set up for success. It's just, what are the things that go wrong and how are they handled?
Yeah.
Right? And it's not necessarily that I think I wish things had gone better or that I had done anything better, but I do think there are plenty of events across time where you don't realize it until you get there, but this one piece of preparation was skipped, or this one thing wasn't worried about. This one element. So the example I'll give is that in the Boston area major was called Shine for many years. It no longer exists, unfortunately, but I was hired by Shine variously throughout the years to sort of just fill whatever role it was that they hadn't filled when I got there, right? And so I think like at different times it was they hadn't hired sufficient staff to stream run, or they hadn't hired sufficient staff to help manage volunteers, or they hadn't hired sufficient staff to, whatever the case may be. And those are always the hardest kinds of events to run when I don't go in knowing my role exactly. Always happy to help and always happy to fill in whatever role is necessary. And of course, that's why I went, right? Because I wanted to make sure the event ran as best as it could. But it's always harder to come in and find out the Thursday of, there really isn't a great structure here for volunteers to check in and get brackets and make sure that the brackets are running properly. So I guess that's what I'm doing. There isn't really a stream running system. So the stream isn't going to consistently get matches. And right now it seems like this system isn't really built properly. And so it's like having to try and do what is all frequently like maybe a month's work of preparation in the span of a day. And that happened. It happens. It wasn't just at Shine. And I want to make sure that like, I'm not like maligning that event series for any reason. Like those events were great. And it happened so often that I think I kind of got numb to that experience of like coming in and saying, this thing is missing. Let's patch this up. So I think maybe not a particular event, but just a general event practice of like, once anyone runs a successful event, and this was true for me in residential life in college as it is for me running Smash and fighting game events now. Once you run an event successfully, it's incredibly important to document processes, document what went well, write it all down, make sure you have it listed out. That way in the future, should you want to iterate on that event again, you know what to either improve upon or repeat. Because I think what happened a lot for us in Smash events throughout the late 2010s was we would make errors or things would be forgotten about. We'd fix them at the time. And then those things were the hyperfixations for the next event to the detriment of something else. And it would just be this interesting cycle of like, what went undercooked this time? And we got pretty good at, to follow the metaphor, I guess, cooking something up real quick the night before, such that the attendees didn't really notice. But you could give me any event on any year that I worked, and I could point out, this was the thing that we were really worried about, and then this was the thing that we should have been worried about. And it's just a little bit of a game of whack-a-mole. So maybe I'll answer that question then, instead of like saying something very definitively and saying this is the thing I wish I'd been better. I think I wish I'd been better at playing whack-a-mole.
Fair. That is definitely a life skill. In concept, at least, in actual gameplay too. Whack-a-mole's a fun, fair game. But definitely the skills you develop from that in everything you do definitely helps. It's for another analogy, it's like spinning plates. Keeping all the plates spinning just to make sure nothing falls off. Definitely helpful, and definitely something that can be learned and should be learned. Just don't do it whilst you are under fire for whatever you're doing, because do it with slightly less stress than a live major event, if possible.
It's a different skill to learn, is how to respin the plates. Under fire.
So back to your role, I guess, at Liquid and Panda. One question I did want to ask when you were speaking about your time at Panda, with coming to near the end of Panda, where things were running smoothly, you were just helping your content creators or Panda's content creators to thrive. Is there a secret source? You can tell me no. Did you have a YouTube person to talk to? These are sometimes questions people ask. I sometimes think about this. Like, there is the algorithm. I'm not going to get into that. There definitely is one somewhere. But did the company have someone representative of YouTube to go, hey, this is what we're doing inside YouTube. This is how we can help you out as Panda organization or even Liquid?
We didn't, no. And I think it's just as true at Liquid as it was at Panda. I think there aren't really those people. As much as we would love to imagine that those people exist, I do think everyone is sort of So the easiest way to explain it is to say the people at the top get to make the trends that benefit them, right? So like, you can look at Mr. Beast, and Mr. Beast is always like the example here, right? And say, what does he do that takes advantage of the YouTube algorithm? It's the wrong framing of the question, though, because he can help dictate what trends and thus is pushed by the other. So like he can do what he wants with his thumbnails. There are, of course, optimal things he's doing, and you can pull lessons from those. There's optimal things he's doing with his editing. But whether or not it works for your audience, for your niche, for your demographic, that's going to be entirely up to experimentation. And so with both Panda and Liquid, I think it's we had inclinations of who our audience was, what they wanted to see. And it was up to us to optimize our editing process and optimize our thumbnail and titling process to update, to optimize our idea generation. Yeah. We did I think the secret sauce, if there ever was one, was just for us to realize that the more contrived something was, the harder it was to sell. And so we originally in the YouTube were doing such complex challenges, or here's 20 things to do in an hour, who can complete it first? And any time that you had to stop and explain something to a viewer in order to understand the context of the video they were watching, you lost people. This is partially why the video essay world of say summoning salt and sing is so compelling, because they are taking a very complex world that they could just in the first 2 minutes say to you, here are all the rules of this world, here's the context of what we're talking about, and let's jump into the history. But instead, they present the complexity to you in a really engaging, entertaining way. And so I think what we learned more than anything was what's simplest tends to work because it's easiest to explain. What are the core emotions we're trying to get at? What does our audience want to experience alongside our creators? And then how can we frame it in a way that's unique and new, that compels folks to check it out? One of the biggest things we did on the Panda fighting game content side was combo trials. So in traditional fighting games, there's always oftentimes this menu in the training mode that gives you, it starts very simple, what are Chun-Li's 2-button 1-2 combinations, and then you get up to this very complex thing of here's the situation, here's a 12, 13, maybe more list of commands you can do in a frame tight window. You got to hit them all in order. And it's a little bit of a completionist exercise. Can I hit this string of things to the game's satisfaction? These are in-game because they're enjoyable to futz around with. What we ended up doing was having our fighting game content creators do them regularly for different titles across the Street Fighter series. Yeah. Just because there was something so viscerally. So you take someone who's an expert at fighting games, you take a Punk or a Justin Wong, who they're champions. You know that they would roll you over in that game. There's no competition. They are phenomenal at what they're doing. And it's very satisfying to watch someone like that struggle in a very specific way, in a similar way that you've struggled. If you've ever done a combo trial, you do the damn thing 10 times, 100 times, and you say, I can't figure out why I'm not getting this. Yeah. And that's the emotion we elicited from them. Incredibly simple premise. And those kinds of videos did phenomenally for us on the Panda fighting games YouTube content side. So we tended towards simple for sure.
Simple works. Keep it simple. Honestly, now that you explained it, why didn't I think of this sooner? This is exactly why I watched those videos, because I did struggle, and watching someone at their level, which is so many levels above me, struggle at the same thing for a shorter amount of time at least, was fun to watch.
Maybe. And sometimes that wasn't the case. Sometimes it did take them 2, 3, 4 hours. That was when the magic happened. It was when the viewer and the pro had identical experiences. Yeah. We had the Smashers, for instance. There's, Sporkle quizzes or online quizzes that have you name every character in Smash Ultimate. Yeah. That's a weirdly daunting task.
There's quite a few characters.
It turns out. And you will always forget about 20 of them. And people at home would play along, or they would play it and then watch the video. And it was just so relatable to watch Plup, who is one of the best Smash Melee players of all time, struggle with what to many folks would be basic knowledge of the game, what characters are in the game, right? And it was such a satisfying thing to watch. Again, deeply relatable. And it didn't require us to give them a list of instructions. It was literally turn your camera on, go to Sporkle, do this quiz,
Yeah.
and we edited it together in a way that was engaging. And that was the magic of it all.
Simple, straightforward, and it worked, and relatable. So yeah, simple, straightforward, relatable. That is probably the three key things I've gathered, at least from this quick answer you've given me. So thank you very much, Josh. It doesn't mean I'm going to create any YouTube content like that for myself, but for all you guys listening, feel free to jump in. So, moving slightly further on, that was one side question I had when you were speaking about setting up Panda for more success. Now you're at Team Liquid, content strategist. You have talent managers looking after hundreds of players across at least 3 different regions. How do you set them up for success then? Like, what do you strategize in a broad sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's not all different from sort of treating it almost like customer service or like a retail side job.
Okay.
The goal is always to make sure that, I mean, if you can follow this metaphor maybe for a little bit, if I manage a bunch of cashiers at a bookstore, right? The goal is for the cashier to make the customer feel as though they belong to the community we're developing in the store, that they feel heard. If the customer has any questions, that those questions are answered, that we present what the store has to offer to the customer in some regard, and that we get them through the process of working with us in a way that, you know, they find satisfying, makes them want to return. Talent management is incredibly similar. Obviously, there are plenty of customers in this metaphor who are contractually tied to the store, but we'll ignore that part for now. The goal is to make sure it all passes, that like everyone on the team, content creator, athlete, whoever, feels a part of the Team Liquid ecosystem, the esports ecosystem, feels like they have someone they can turn to ask questions for. Many of these folks are on the younger side, right? Like many esports athletes and content creators are in their late teens, early 20s, sometimes mid 20s, and even more rarely later than that. But a lot of these folks, this has been their primarily adult experience, is being in this space. So it's keeping an open mind and helping folks along with little things like, how do I do my taxes? How do I figure, being there for them in ways that go beyond just TL obligations. And then, of course, when TL obligations come through, explaining them clearly, helping them understand why we're doing the things we're doing, getting them the resources they need, booking their travel if need be, all the sort of standard talent management things. But the way I try and set up my staff for success is always emphasizing to them, you know, where is your talent at in life, either broadly or right now? Is there a way that we can assist them, or is there something about these activations that we could shift to make them find more value in them, either because they get to go to a cool place and do a cool thing, or because they get to learn a new skill or be exposed to something new, and always making sure that we're pulling feedback from the talent. I think one of the things I saw in other teams, and this sounds like I'm starting to like give a little bit of like gossip here, but I promise it's not all that much. One of the things I saw in a lot of other teams was that the contracted player was the means to an end. Oh, we have this partner and they need these things from us. We're going to sign this person and all they're going to do with these things. And forgetting that that person is coming in with excitement about joining a team or hopes and dreams or whatever else. Yeah. And they just become the tool to finish this task as opposed to becoming part of a community or a culture.
Yeah.
And so I think it's the biggest thing I emphasize, and to their credit, my talent managers that work under me right now are very good at this already, but it's a nice thing to constantly emphasize, you know, where are they at with their lives and what value can we bring them as we, you know, work with them and try and figure out how we can also utilize their services.
Yeah. Cool. No, that makes complete sense. And the analogy definitely worked. I've followed through quite well there. So you did quite well. You did excellent even, Josh. Thank you for that. That's like how you set them up for success. How would you, this is without sounding a bit too corporate, like how would you choose your team if you had a choice of all the talent managers in the world to come to you and your organization, doesn't matter if it's Liquid or Panda or whoever you're with at the moment, what would you look for in choosing people to work with you on part of your team?
Yeah, it is, for better or worse, the $1 million question, in at least my sector of the industry, right, is like, what makes for a good talent manager?
Yeah.
My experience is that someone has to be incredibly flexible on their feet. There's no value in coming in with a preconceived mindset of how things have to go, with no flexibility. Content creators, athletes, are going to come in with all sorts of different needs for the day, demeanors, sort of set up for what they're ready to do, and having to adapt to what the situation around you is key. So it's quick thinking on your feet. It's being creative in your problem solving, and then it's also having the sort of tact, the capacity to communicate difficult or nuanced things to content creators. We do, unfortunately, exist in an economic space where we regularly have to do what are, functionally speaking, glorified ads, right, for our partners. That is why they pay us, and so it's why we're here. And so it's helping to understand, helping to get this huge esport athlete to understand why they need to shill this product in precisely this way.
Yeah.
When they're so used to, in their regular life, if they stream, having full creative control over the content they produce.
Yeah.
And it's having to navigate that sort of conversation, taking in their perspective. This is way more on brand for me to do this versus the product team absolutely needs that.
Yeah. And
sort of marrying them. So I think in an ideal world, every talent manager, and this is not just ones that work under me, but I think every talent manager has a creative streak, is very strong at adapting to changing situations, and is capable of reaching talent where they're at, either that day or in general through communication.
Yeah.
It's so often that we have talent managers who, and not necessarily at Liquid, but sort of that I've seen in general, talent managers who rigidly approach communicating with talent in a specific way, in their own way, and that doesn't suit the best needs of the talent. Sometimes talent are maybe not especially good at nuanced reading. That's totally fine. You can deliver news in different ways. You can deliver information in different ways. Maybe the talent is really good at charismatically delivering an ad read, but doesn't remember lines. So you can work with them in a different way, and it's making sure that you keep that level of adaptability front of mind.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes complete sense. Shilling is, for better or for worse, has to happen, especially as organizations have sponsors. And I wouldn't say it's shilling as such, but you get paid because they are part of you. They are your partner. And so you do have to speak good on what they have provided. Luckily, nothing I have here is sponsored or provided for me. So
I was going to say, Darren, that's a great moment for you to be like, and this episode sponsor is
Evoli.
So perfect. Oh, well.
I'm still working my way. I've not actually looked at any sponsorship at all yet so far. Like I said, I'm not even shilling the YouTube channel. But thank you for, again, joining me, Josh, on this.
Of course.
But instead of shilling, I'm just going to complain because if you stayed this long, this episode has had a slight issue. My microphone started getting feedback, so part of the questions may have to be re-recorded with no voiceover from myself. But Elgato Wave 1 was the microphone I was using. It might probably the USB cable, not the hardware's fault, but change the USB cable. So, you started from university, college, like in your PhD, worked throughout the years when Smash WiiU came out, to making Riptide happen, to stepping back slightly, to working with Panda, working with Team Liquid. That is a very condensed summary of 10 years of your career right now, Josh. What would, and you got lucky, I say you got lucky, apologies, I don't mean that in that sense.
No, you're 100% correct, so you can keep going. I absolutely got lucky, but go ahead.
You got lucky, you met with leaders that were part of Panda, or part of an organization, and they offered you a role, which then put you down a different path of instead of education to be where you are at the moment. People sometimes don't get lucky or aren't in that position. Like, what would you suggest to them, to people that are listening to this? Like, how would they get exposure to become like a social media manager, to be a talent manager, to be a talent strategist? Like, it's not a set path, obviously. Your path is definitely one of them. So yeah, the question is, like, what would you do? What would you advise, suggest to people listening? Like, hey, this is something you should look at to get your foot stuck in the door, to dip your toes in, have a look, see if you like it before you even commit to saying, hey, this is what my career should be.
Yeah. It's a funny bit because I do get asked all the time, how did you get to where you are? And I do always preface it by saying the path I took is now impossible. Like, it cannot happen again in the way that I went through with it. One, because I happened to come in when there was a lack of event runners, right? For WiiU, there will never be a lack of event runners again for Smash, at least in the future, at least as far as I can tell, just given how much streaming events has grown on and how much the community has developed. So I do get asked all the time, sort of, how did you end up where you ended up? What's nice about it being 10 years separated from that, though, is that those 10 years have gone with really considerable changes in how we find talent managers and how this industry treats and handles folks behind the scenes. The basic path is still the same. Get involved with your local scene, learn what it's like to be if you want to be a social media person, volunteer to help do social media at a mid-sized fighting game event or Smash event. If you want to be a talent manager, help with volunteer coordination at major events, working with a large staff of people who are there to help run the event, and take those experiences and always try and push them forward. There are dozens of events all throughout the year in all geographic locations that need either voluntary or, unfortunately, relatively low compensation assistance. These are great ways to figure out, one, is this for you? Do you enjoy this kind of thing? And then two, who are the people I need to know in order to continue going forward with this? It's incredibly common for me to see someone who I knew volunteered at an event that I ran 8 years ago, now seeing them running, say, online tournaments or running their local scene. And when it comes time for a larger regional or major event to happen in their backyard, they're a logical choice. And so they've already started down that path. Now, making the jump from event running and like being in the event space to the structured esports side, that's the one where I think there's a little bit of opportunism that has to come with it. There's a little bit of right place, right time, and you have to rely on your luck a little bit.
Yeah.
But there are always new esports teams. They always bubble up. Many of them won't last, but they will last for a certain period of time. And they don't need to last forever for you to get the experience to continue furthering your career. And so I would say keep an eye on teams that you look up to or teams that you have heard of, their career pages. If it's a mid-sized team or a smaller team, hit up either their leadership, or if they have a social media person, hit up their social media person. Just find out sort of what the culture is like. Are they looking for more help? If you have the capacity, if you have the economic means to do so, volunteer to do that for a little bit. But if you don't, that's also totally understandable. Apply for jobs as they come up. And sort of just get yourself known to people who make these decisions in hiring. We can pretend like we are an established industry in this with the same modes and models as, the automotive industry, which has existed for many, many, many years, or the traditional sports broadcasting industry, which existed for many, many years. The truth is that's not the case. We are still relatively small. We still rely on folks vouching for each other. I mean, as I benefited from, we still rely on folks having worked with other people that they like and passing on those recommendations to folks who have the position to hire for these positions. And so it is just like getting in front of as many people as possible, showing that you can do a good job, and letting it be known that you're looking to continue furthering yourself down this path.
Yeah. So, getting in front of people, being nice, doing a good job. Like, I could say a great job, but doing a good job and basically not causing issues wherever you go.
Right.
No, definitely. I 100% agree. And yeah, job page, career pages for a lot of organizations, for a lot of businesses do exist. Definitely check those out. When you were speaking about that, one thing that came to mind when you were speaking about, smaller organizations that are bubbling up, that have just been created. I am a avid Valorant watcher, play it a few times where possible. Ascension is happening at the moment because we're in the off season. These organizations are coming up. They are trying to get into the tier 1 leagues, and they may be definitely they're probably definitely a lot smaller than your Team Liquids, your TSMs, your other more G2s. So they probably are looking for people to help and trying to get that experience. Like I said, doesn't have to an organization doesn't have to last forever for you to get that experience. You get that experience, you make your time worth it for yourself. The benefits are you get paid, you get a 401k, you get all those fun things where possible. If these organizations allow it, the rest of the team. But I'm thinking more established businesses instead of esports organizations. But yes, those things can happen, should happen. And as esports develop into a industry, that's the word, that's more self-sufficient in terms of stability and building out more stuff, that is probably a good dream to have. And that's what we want to do, right? We want to stay in a career path or a job where we like what we do. We wake up and go, yeah, this is what I want to do, and I want to continue doing it. For Panda, for Team Liquid, for G2, for any organization you're with within the esports scene or community. So, as a great shout. You also mentioned, volunteering or having a unfortunately low-paid position. I say low-paid position for low monetary value for events. So I want to pick your brain slightly, Josh, for this. Do you think that will ever change for fighting games and Smash? Esports as a whole, people are throwing out wild numbers. Like we've had Esports World Cup, we've had Fortnite, Rocket League, Valorant, Riot in general. But for fighting games, Smash, our monetary prize pool is extremely small compared to the other scenes.
Truly.
So in your personal opinion, like I know because of what we've spoken about and who you're employed for, I don't want to take any words out of your mouth here. Just want to get your thoughts on if there is a way we could help boost the ecosystem as such.
So there's a couple ways to tackle this, right? I think you started the question talking about staff and staff behind the scenes of events. And I think we're starting to see in Smash and FGC folks who are able to make maybe not a full-time job salary from this, but certainly are supporting themselves and only need to have maybe a part-time job on the side or a side hustle in general to be financially stable. We're beginning to see a small number of folks in the Smash and the fighting game world achieve this. I think that's partially because of factors like, say, Sony owning Evo and thus putting a little bit of marketing money into that, or other sort of corporate folks coming in and saying we want to wield these events for our marketing means, and thus here's some budget to support people throughout the year. I know a number of Smash events do have organizers who can rely on income from that throughout the year, who have side hustles, but certainly are utilizing, are properly marketing their events such that they can support themselves. I think right now the current ecosystem is that no one can survive outside of event runners doing what they do year round.
Yeah.
There's always a sort of secondary gig. Do I see that changing anytime soon? Probably not. I don't foresee there ever being enough of a demand for a full-time team to be established. I think so many events all utilize different people. Either they emphasize local talent for their event running or whatever, or they hire local streamers. These are all good things, just for the record, but it does prevent there being more full-time jobs in esports events. Now, that was sort of one part of the question. The second part was the player side. Do I ever see Smash and the FGC having sustainable, huge prize pools in the realm of other esports? I think the best part of the Smash and FGC world is the nature of it being inherently grassroots. So many of the huge tournaments and events that we have throughout the year started as folks gathering together in a small space, be it someone's garage or a small hotel ballroom or whatever, playing these games for whatever entry fee times entrance number is, right? And like that's the prize pool. We have seen recently a couple movements towards higher prize pools. The Capcom Cup prize pool last year was $1 million. We, of course, just had the Sports World Cup for Tekken and Street Fighter, both with pretty hefty prize pools each. I think what that shows me, though, is that so the Street Fighter, the Capcom Cup one makes sense because it was the first year of Street Fighter 6. This is a huge time to market your game.
Yeah.
There's a great opportunity to reach new people if you throw a huge number for sake of publicity. And that money will persist as long as there's a reason for, in this instance, Capcom, but in broadly speaking, any dev to advertise their game. Smash sort of hits at a funny place there where there is no reason to advertise Melee, right? Like there's no reason for Nintendo, specifically Nintendo, to want to sell copies of Melee because they don't produce any more copies of Melee. This is a 23, 24-year-old game now. You know, it is not, the GameCube is not in production, GameCube discs are not in production, GameCube controllers are inconsistently in production thanks to newer Smash games, but like the whole ecosystem there doesn't do anything for Nintendo. So is there a world where I see Melee having enormous consistent prize pools? Not unless it's funded through an institution like EWC was, or in the event that Nintendo feels they need to start throwing large marketing dollars towards it. Ultimate's a bit of a different story, and I think Ultimate sits in the same spot as Street Fighter and Tekken, where as long as there's a reason to advertise it and market it, there's always the hope of large money coming into those prize pools. I don't think, as it currently stands, it's something to hope for.
Sure.
And I'm going to say that in a very, I want to be clear. Having a game with a huge prize pool does not a great game make, right? And having a game with a huge prize pool does not a great game's competitive infrastructure make. You can look at plenty of instances. I think OWL comes to mind. So much money was thrown at the Overwatch League. Was it a good competitive experience? I don't know, because I wasn't a part of it, and I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it. So my impression from hearing other people talk about it was no, that it was kind of rough, kind of poorly conceived, but it had money, at least briefly.
Yeah.
And so I think I wouldn't wish big prize pools on Smash and the FGC if I had the ability to.
Okay.
I would want it to come from a place that allowed for more sustainability. And I think I'd want it to come from a place that rewarded players for engaging productively in the communities they come from. I wish there was more incentive. Like, there is decent incentive to be a big Twitch streamer, right? Or a big content creator on YouTube.
Yeah.
There's certainly ad revenue, and you can certainly make a living that way.
Yeah.
I wish there was a stronger reward for top players in these spaces who choose to do that. It's a bit hit or miss. I can think of a dozen examples of people who are top 20 in their games that are not presences on Twitch or YouTube, that are not making much money from it.
Yeah.
Certainly way more examples than people who actually are. And I wish that weren't the case. That's what I would wish for the ecosystems of these games more than anything, was some sort of creator fund or something that encourages people to really put their expertise on display, or to put their personalities on display for audiences.
Yeah.
Whether or not Spargo can roll up to a Smash Ultimate tournament and walk away with $1 million once a year, I'm a little less interested in that. And this isn't to say Spargo absolutely deserves $1 million once a year, you know?
Of course.
I don't have it to give him, and I don't know anyone who has it to give him.
No. If we did, we'd all be amazing.
Yeah. Right. And I'm not privy to his contract, but I'm going to make the assumption he's not pulling $1 million a year from his contract with FaZe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I see sort of how big money interacts in other esports, and it does great things for building hype. I don't necessarily think it makes games better, or makes competitions better, or makes competitive settings better.
Okay.
And I love where Smash and the FGC are at right now.
Yeah.
I think flagship events like Evo, like Genesis for the Smash side, they are phenomenal spectator events. They're phenomenal competitive events, and they emphasize the best and the reason why we're all here, which is to either play and lose miserably at a fighting game, and or the chance to watch someone be phenomenal at a fighting game.
Yeah.
Or I guess for a small number of us to be actually good at the fighting game. But very small number of us.
Very small percentage, 0.01% at best.
Truly.
Yeah, right. No, amazing. Honestly, I agree with all your points. When you mentioned having like a creative fund, guys, again, if you're still listening, like if you want to be like a talent manager, like help players manage their social media. One thing I've always been advocating and shouting about is you have Start.gg, you have Smash.gg, sorry. You have your profile on there where you link to other social media platforms. It only link Twitter, that's perfectly fine. Link your Twitter, but in your Twitter bio, link to your Instagram, to your Facebook, to your TikTok, to everything. Make it easy for everyone to find you on whatever platform they want to, as long as you have a central location. As a photographer, trying to tag any player that in the fighting game scene on Instagram is the worst thing in the world, because
Instagram especially,
it's 99% impossible. For those that are and use Instagram, they don't use it for those fighting games. Well, hey, you might want a new profile picture, and if I tag you on Instagram and you look amazing, you can crop that in and only show your face. They don't need to know you're playing fighting games or doing whatever you're doing. But yeah, please, again, guys, if you're still listening, link all your social media to a central location where possible. Especially if you're on Start.gg, Smash.gg. And for those listening and want to be a talent manager, maybe reach out to players and see if you are able to help them. Like, hey, you want to be a creative force in the scene. YouTube, Twitch, whatever platform you guys are going for. Like, hey, like I can help you write tweets out, write the copy out, do all of this for you because you don't want to. And for a short amount of time, do it for free, get the exposure, get the experience. Sorry, I said the E word, the exposure word. I don't like being paid in exposure. No one ever should be paid in exposure where possible.
No, certainly. Experience, different E word, getting paid in experience.
Getting paid in experience, definitely worth it. But only do it to making sure you're not being taken advantage of. Again, if you are able to do it in your spare time, please do so. But well-being of yourself is paramount. Look after yourself first before looking after anyone else. And
I'll still do that. I'll still do that today. Where I was watching YouTube content the other day I play a character in Street Fighter named JP. I was watching JP content, and it was this person who made this really instructional video about how does JP deal with Akuma's various tools, and it was a really cool video. The problem was he indicated in the comments he edited himself. He edited it such that the end of every sentence was immediately followed by the beginning of the next one. He cut out all of the pauses.
Oof.
And if anyone's ever listened to someone who talks without pauses, you never get a chance to absorb sort of what they're saying. So what I did, and I do this pretty regularly, is I just sort of left a comment saying, I love this content. I did have to watch it a couple times, and here's the easy way to make it easier for your listeners to understand what you're saying. And you delivered it in as least of a non-condescending, just here's some friendly advice kind of way, trying hard not to be that YouTube commenter, right, who comes in and says everything you do is wrong.
Yeah.
But trying to at all passes just leave little notes for folks because we're all learning.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, I love your point about if you're aspiring talent manager, one of the best ways you can help gain your skills there is by helping a top player understand their own value in different spaces.
Yeah. Before I even created this podcast, I was helping edit a different podcast for a friend of mine, and I was like, hey, you should do all these things. I will edit it for you for free because I have spare time. Now I do my own podcast. I do this, where I try and shine light on other people like yourself, Josh. Again, so thank you for joining me on this episode. Getting experience, not exposure, experience to what you might want to do in the future. Do it as long as it is no detriment to yourself. So, a couple of last questions, Josh, and we'll wrap up because I am very aware of how much time you have because you are a very busy man, especially in an organization like TL. What is one thing you want people to know about your role? Like, and your role, especially at the moment being talent strategist, is a role people are not really aware of. Oh, I say not really. I'm not aware of your role, so you could tell me anything and I will take it as gospel. So what is one thing I should need to know about your role?
I think one thing that comes up a lot is as I will say to someone, I work in talent management. I represent athletes or content creators, and I help them sort of achieve what they're looking to achieve, while also helping TL achieve what TL wants to achieve. They'll say, "Oh, okay, so you're like their dad who like pack their bags and bring them to events and book their travel." And I think the thing that always irks me about that is like, one, to a tiny extent, it's true. To a very, very small extent, that is part of the responsibility, is just to be there as someone to offer support and to help problem solve. And so, yeah, like it's mildly parental in that regard, only in that regard, right? Like everyone is their own person. They're all adults. They can make their own decisions. I think the thing that I always want folks to understand about this sort of role is that this is just as much as, a social media manager or a marketing manager. This is a marketing role. This is a role that helps me help you as the client in this case, or the talent in this case, understand what you bring to the table. And not everyone in our spaces, especially in Smash and the FGC, know what they bring to the table. So these sorts of roles like mine, I feel are incredibly important to the health of our sector. If you play a game where all the top players don't understand that they have a value to deliver, or that they have a value they can utilize, you're going to have a game full of people who are signed to crappy contracts, who are not shining their light on the community, who are not giving back to the people that helped establish them. And it's sort of a sad sort of state. So yeah, I think the big thing I would want people to know about my role in talent management is that there's a lot of good to be found in helping folks recognize their own value and their own potential.
Yeah.
Especially in spaces they don't already know about it. For event running, I think we talked about it earlier. The event running one is easy. There are 7 jillion people behind every single event that you never see or never thank. And so anytime you step into any ballroom ever of any size, a convention center, someone's garage, and a bracket is running, there are more folks than you realize that allow that to happen, and always, always, always being gracious to the space, not throwing chairs, for instance, not pointing any fingers, being gracious to the space that you're in, and recognizing that there are many people who allowed you to have the experience that you're having that day, and being gracious towards it. Even if you can't find them or don't know who they are, sort of understanding that and respecting that as you exist in the space they've helped create.
Be nice, be cool to everyone. I want to say treat them like a retail worker. For a lot of people, that's good. For everyone else that don't treat retail workers well, not you guys. You guys should just treat everyone with kindness and respect.
It's a human thing.
Yes.
Recognize that there are people who have sacrificed their time, and maybe they're being compensated for it, maybe they're not. Even if they are, they've sacrificed their time, and they're giving you the benefit of their expertise to make your experience better.
Yeah.
So
agreed. So Josh, that's all my questioning for you. Signing off, really. Anything you want to plug, promote? Like, where can people reach you if you want people to reach you? Like, if people can ask questions, like this is your. I've asked you a lot of questions already. If you want to share anything.
Sure. I think I would implore everybody, if you have never actually properly checked out Team Liquid's offerings, it is something that I will say, and with full honesty, that I was guilty of before joining the organization. Team Liquid is not an enormous presence in the spaces that I'm in. Of course, Hungrybox is part of it, and Buzz and Riddles on the Smash Ultimate side, Nephew, Shadow, and Kudan's on the fighting game side. But if you've not checked out Team Liquid stuff, and you're interested in any of the esports that we compete in, do check out that stuff. The teams that make our content are really phenomenal, very creative early, and really charismatic. So the videos always come across especially well. There are like 6 different YouTube channels depending on the game you're interested in. But otherwise, you can find me on Twitter. I don't tweet a whole lot anymore, all things considered. I'm kind of enjoying not tweeting very much. I used to have to tweet a lot as part of previous roles and as part of working in the Smash community. But I am on Twitter at Jaaahsh, JAAAHSH, on Instagram at Jaaahsh, JOSH, JAAAHSH, Jaaahsh.Jaaahsh. I really make it very hard to find myself, I guess, I realize now. But, I do marketing in other places. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Josh.
Of course.
Final question, because you've just mentioned Team Liquid. And personally being a fan of most of Team Liquid's offerings, what is your favorite collab that Team Liquid have done?
Oh, sure. I think the one that strikes me as having had the most. So we've already done 3 Naruto collaborations, right? And I don't know much about Naruto. I'm not a huge anime watcher.
Okay.
I don't like anytime we have like a Death Note come out or Naruto, I say to myself, okay, like I know of these things. But I will say, like, having seen 3 different Naruto collaborations come through, I love the amount of creativity that has come out of the team in creating those. It's not all for me. That's true for every piece of passion. It's not all for everybody.
Yeah.
You might not see yourself in each piece, but I think the love and care that went into those lines specifically shines through really clearly. So I think it's probably the all 3 Naruto collaborations that we've done.
Cool. Amazing. No, those collaborations are great. Again, like you said, not all for me, but I definitely see where people have poured their heart into it. And so,
seeing them in the wild is cool. It's like, again, especially if you like see a piece that you don't necessarily feel is for you, but then you see it in the wild, you see it being worn by somebody, you say that person, that piece was made for that person. They look great wearing it. That happens so often.
Hopefully, I get to see a bit more in the UK and Europe. The shipping costs are crazy.
Yeah, it's a constant struggle. I know I work with the apparel team often enough to know that they're always looking for solutions, because it's such a tricky thing being an international company in that regard.
Definitely. But no, that is all my questioning. I won't have any more surprise questions for you, Josh. Again, thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a great day, guys. Thank you if you're still listening. Thank you for listening. And if you have any comments, drop them in the channels. This is on YouTube. This is on Pocket Casts. This is on Spotify. And Josh has already mentioned where you can find him. You can find me in the normal places as well. I will catch you guys next episode. Peace.
Thank you.